The massive space station hung in the void like a silver flower, its metal petals stretching toward the distant stars. Proxima 7 Station was neutral ground, built by the Galactic Council for meetings between different species. Today, it hosted one of the most important diplomatic talks in recent history. Captain Sarah Chen walked through the gleaming corridors, her black uniform crisp and clean. She carried herself with quiet confidence, her dark eyes taking in everything around her. Behind her walked two other humans, Lieutenant Commander James Park and Dr. Elena Vasquez. They were the first human delegation to ever attend a Galactic Council meeting. The corridor was filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some walked on four legs, others floated in the air. A few looked almost human, while others were so strange that Sarah had to force herself not to stare. All of them watched the humans with curious eyes as they passed. "Remember," Sarah said quietly to her team, "we're here to make friends, not enemies. Earth needs allies out here." They reached the main council chamber, a huge room with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. Representatives from dozens of species sat around a circular table. At the head of the table stood Ambassador Krelon, an ancient being whose body seemed to be made of living light. "Welcome, humans of Earth," Krelon said, his voice echoing strangely in the room. "Please take your seats." Sarah and her team sat in the chairs marked for them. Across the table, she could see the Veltar hegemony delegation. They were tall beings with bodies covered in crystal-like armor. Their leader, Commander Zethkar, towered over everyone else in the room. His 6 arms moved constantly as he spoke to his advisors, and his red eyes glowed with inner fire. "Now," Krelon began, "we are here to discuss the recent expansion of human colonies into the Outer Rim sectors. Several species have raised concerns about this activity." Commander Zethkar stood up, his crystal armor catching the light. "Concerns?" he said, his voice like grinding stone. "The soft flesh creatures from the Deathworld have taken 3 systems without permission. This is not a concern, it is an act of war." Sarah felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice calm. "Commander, with respect, those systems were empty. Our surveys found no signs of intelligent life or prior claims." "Empty?" Zethkar laughed, a harsh sound that made several other delegates flinch. "You primitive creatures do not understand galactic law. The hegemony has claimed those sectors for future expansion. Your presence there is illegal." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward. "According to Article 7 of the Galactic Expansion Treaty, unclaimed systems are open for colonization by any species that—" "Silence!" Zethkar's voice boomed through the chamber. "I will not be lectured on law by creatures who still fight with metal sticks on their dirtball world." Sarah stood up slowly. Her voice remained steady and professional. "Commander, I must ask you to show proper respect for this diplomatic meeting. We are here in good faith to resolve any misunderstandings." "Good faith?" Zethkar moved around the table, his heavy footsteps echoing. "You Deathworlders think you can come to the galaxy and demand respect? You live on a planet that tries to kill you every day. Your own star burns your skin. Your atmosphere is poison to most civilized species. You are nothing but primitive savages who learned to build metal boxes to carry you between stars." The room grew very quiet. Even Ambassador Krelon seemed unsure what to say. Sarah could feel the eyes of every delegate on her. She knew that this moment would be remembered for a long time. "Commander," she said carefully, "Earth may be a dangerous world, but it has made us strong. We have survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, plagues, and wars. We have learned to work together despite our differences. That strength has brought us to the stars. Strength." Zethkar was now standing right in front of her. His red eyes blazed with anger. "You know nothing of strength, soft flesh. Your species is weak. Your bodies break easily. You live such short lives that you barely have time to learn anything useful." "We have learned enough to reach the stars," Sarah replied. "We have learned enough to make tools and ships and homes on worlds that were once empty rock. We have learned enough to want peace with our neighbors." "Peace," Zethkar spat. "You want peace because you are weak. You know that in a real fight, species like yours always lose. You come here begging for scraps, hoping the strong will allow you to keep your little colonies." Sarah felt her hands clench into fists, but she forced them to relax. "We are not begging for anything, Commander. We are following galactic law and trying to be good neighbors." "Galactic law means nothing to Deathworlders," Zethkar said. His voice was getting louder with each word. "You think because you can build a few ships you deserve to sit at this table with civilized beings? You think your opinion matters in galactic affairs? Other delegates began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. This was supposed to be a peaceful meeting, but Zethkar's anger was making everyone nervous. "Commander," Ambassador Krelon said in his echoing voice, "perhaps we should—" "No." Zethkar slammed one of his hands on the table. "These primitives need to learn their place. They need to understand that the galaxy belongs to the strong, not to scavengers from Deathworlds." Sarah took a deep breath. "Commander, I understand you have concerns about human expansion. We are willing to discuss them in a calm and rational way, but I will not stand here and listen to insults about my people or my world." "You will not?" Zethkar's laugh was ugly and cold. "And what will you do about it, soft flesh? Will you cry? Will you run back to your death world and hide?" "I will continue to represent humanity with dignity," Sarah said, "even if others cannot do the same." That was when Zethkar's control finally snapped. His pride had been building all day, fed by anger and the desire to show his strength in front of the other delegates. The idea that this small, soft creature from a death world would dare to speak to him with such confidence was more than he could bear. His crystal-armored hand moved faster than most beings could see. It struck Sarah across the face with enough force to break the bones of weaker species. The sound echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. Sarah's head snapped to the side. Blood appeared at the corner of her mouth. For a moment, the entire room was silent except for the quiet hum of the station's life support systems. Slowly, Sarah turned back to face Zethkar. Her hand came up to touch the blood on her lip, and she looked at it for a long moment. When she raised her eyes to meet his, there was something in them that had not been there before. "That," she said quietly, "was a mistake, Commander." Her voice was still calm, still professional, but now there was something else in it. Something cold and dangerous that made every being in the room suddenly remember that humans came from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. And they had not just survived and grew, they had won. The galaxy was about to learn what that really meant. The silence in the council chamber stretched like a held breath. Every delegate stared at the small human woman who stood with blood on her lip, facing down a being twice her size. Commander Zethkar seemed as shocked as anyone else by what he had done. His crystal armor caught the light as his chest rose and fell with heavy breathing. Ambassador Krelon's form flickered with agitation. "Commander Zethkar, this is completely unacceptable. You have struck a diplomatic representative under the protection of the Galactic Council." But Sarah Chen was not looking at the ambassador. Her dark eyes remained fixed on Zethkar as she slowly reached into her uniform jacket. Several alien delegates tensed, but she only pulled out a small communication device. The blood from her split lip had already started to dry. "This is Captain Chen to Admiral Rodriguez," she said into the device. Her voice was still perfectly calm and professional. "Priority Alpha communication required." The device crackled for a moment. Then a gravelly human voice answered. "Captain Chen, this is Admiral Rodriguez. What is your status?" "Sir, diplomatic protocols have been suspended." Sarah's eyes never left Zethkar's face as she spoke. "I am reporting a physical assault by Commander Zethkar of the Veltar hegemony against a human diplomatic representative during official Galactic Council proceedings." The line went quiet for several long seconds. When Admiral Rodriguez spoke again, his voice had changed. It was colder now, with an edge that made several aliens in the room shift uncomfortably. "Captain, are you injured?" "Minor injuries only, sir. But the assault was witnessed by the entire Galactic Council and is being broadcast live across all diplomatic channels." Another pause. Then, "Understood, Captain." "Are you in immediate danger?" Sarah looked around the room. Most of the alien delegates seemed stunned by what had happened. A few were already speaking quietly into their own communication devices. Commander Zethkar stood frozen, as if he was just now understanding what he had done. "Negative, sir. Station security is present, and I believe the situation is contained for now." "Copy that. Captain Chen, you are to remain exactly where you are. Do not leave that station under any circumstances. Do not accept any offers of transport from alien vessels." "Is that clear?" "Crystal clear, sir." "Good. And Captain?" "Yes, sir." "Operation Righteous Fury is now authorized. All battle groups are to converge on Proxima 7th immediately. We're coming to collect our people." The communication device went silent. Sarah slowly put it back in her jacket pocket and looked around the room. Every alien delegate was staring at her with expressions ranging from confusion to growing alarm. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward in her seat. "Sarah, what is Operation Righteous Fury?" Sarah wiped the blood from her lip with the back of her hand. "Emergency protocol, Elena. When human diplomatic personnel are threatened or harmed, the colonial fleet responds in force." Commander Zethkar finally found his voice. "You dare to threaten the hegemony? Your tiny fleet of survey ships cannot survey ships?" Sarah's eyebrow rose slightly. "Commander, I think you may have misunderstood something about humanity's presence in space." Across the room, delegates were receiving urgent messages from their home governments. The Altarian representative, a bird-like creature with silver feathers, suddenly stood up with alarm. "My government's long-range sensors are detecting multiple energy signatures moving toward this system," she announced. "They appear to be significant in number." The Corvin delegate, whose species was known for their advanced sensor technology, was staring at his own communication device with growing disbelief. "This cannot be correct. Our deep space monitoring stations are showing massive fleet movements from human space. The energy readings are unprecedented." Ambassador Krelon's form was flickering more rapidly now. "Captain Chen, perhaps you could explain what your people are doing?" Sarah touched her lip again, checking to see if it was still bleeding. "Ambassador, when humanity joined the galactic community, we hoped for peaceful relations with all species. We sent our diplomatic teams in small, unarmed vessels to show that we came in peace, but we are not defenseless." Lieutenant Commander Park spoke up for the first time since entering the chamber. "Sir, with respect to the commander here," he nodded toward Zethkar. He struck a representative of Earth. "In human culture, that is considered an act of war." The room erupted in worried chatter as more delegates received urgent communications from their governments. The Centauri representative was pale as he spoke to his own council. The usually calm Danebians were clicking their claws together in obvious distress. Commander Zethkar's red eyes blazed with anger and confusion. "This is impossible. Our intelligence reports showed that humans have only a few dozen ships, primitive vessels used for exploration and trade." "Your intelligence was incomplete," Sarah said simply. "We allowed you to see what we wanted you to see. Humanity has been in space for longer than most species realize. We have been building and preparing while others thought we were just starting to learn." Dr. Vasquez was looking at her captain with new understanding. "The colony ships we sent out over the past 50 years, they weren't just carrying settlers, were they?" "No, Elena, they were carrying shipyards, mining equipment, manufacturing facilities. Everything needed to build a real fleet far from Earth, where no one would notice." Sarah's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she was discussing the weather. The Altarian delegate was now receiving a constant stream of updates. "The energy signatures are getting stronger. My government estimates at least 300 vessels, possibly more. They are moving at speeds we did not know human ships could achieve." 300? Zethkar's voice cracked slightly. "That is impossible. No species maintains fleets of that size except for species that have something to protect," Sarah finished. "Commander, you struck a human diplomat in front of the entire galaxy. That action has consequences." Ambassador Krelon moved closer to the human delegation. "Captain Chen, surely this response is excessive for a single incident." Sarah looked at the ancient being with something almost like sadness in her eyes. "Ambassador, my people have learned hard lessons about what happens when bullies are allowed to act without consequences. We have seen what happens when the strong prey on the weak and no one stands up to stop them. But this was just," Krelon began. "This was an attack on a diplomatic representative under your protection," Sarah cut him off. "If humanity allows this to pass without response, how long before other species decide that humans can be attacked with impunity? How long before our colonies are raided, our ships destroyed, our people enslaved?" The room fell silent again as the implications of her words sank in. These aliens had never faced a species like humanity, one that had learned to fight not just for survival, but for principle. Commander Zethkar's armor seemed less bright now, as if the crystal was clouding with his growing fear. "Your admiral spoke of Operation Righteous Fury. What does this mean?" Sarah looked at him for a long moment before answering. "It means, Commander, that you are about to learn why the galaxy should be very careful about striking a human. It means that in approximately 72 hours, you will understand exactly how big a mistake you just made. Outside the station, in the dark between the stars, Space itself began to ripple as the first human ships started to arrive. 72 hours had passed since Commander Zethkar struck Captain Sarah Chen. The space around Proxima 7 station was no longer empty. The Veltar hegemony had responded to the crisis by sending their third battle fleet, 47 warships, including the massive dreadnought, Eternal Conquest. The Galactic Council had deployed their peacekeeping force of 30 vessels. Several other species had sent ships to protect their interests, creating a gathering of over 100 alien warships around the neutral station. All of them were watching the edge of the system with growing unease. The first human ship had appeared 6 hours ago. It was a sleek destroyer that had simply materialized out of empty space, without any of the usual energy discharges that marked faster-than-light travel. Since then, more ships had been arriving steadily, one every few minutes. Captain Chen stood in the station's observation deck, looking out at the growing human fleet. Her lip had healed, but she had refused medical treatment to remove the small scar that remained. Dr. Vasquez and Lieutenant Commander Park stood beside her, along with Ambassador Krelon and several other delegates who seemed unable to look away from the arriving ships. "How many now?" Dr. Vasquez asked quietly. 417, Park replied, checking his tablet, and more arriving every few minutes. The Corvan delegate, whose people were known for having the best sensors in the galaxy, was studying his readings with obvious disbelief. These energy signatures make no sense. The weapon systems alone should require power plants larger than our biggest stations. "Perhaps your sensors are malfunctioning," suggested the Centauri representative, though his voice lacked conviction. "Our sensors are functioning perfectly," the Corvan replied. "That is what worries me." Commander Zethkar had spent the last 3 days alternating between rage and growing fear. The hegemony had never faced an unknown fleet of this size. Their own intelligence services were sending increasingly frantic reports about human colonies that seemed to have vanished from their records, replaced by massive industrial complexes that had somehow escaped notice for decades. "This is impossible," he muttered for the 100th time. "How did they hide this from us?" Captain Chen turned from the window to look at him. "We learned from watching other species, Commander. We saw how the strong dominated the weak in this galaxy. We decided we would not be weak. But the energy requirements alone..." The Corvan delegate was still staring at his instruments. "To power ships of this size would require antimatter reactors beyond anything we have ever seen. Antimatter is inefficient," Lieutenant Commander Park said casually. "We use zero-point energy extractors now. Much cleaner and more powerful." The alien delegate stared at him in shock. Zero-point energy was theoretical for most species. The idea that humans had actually built working extractors was terrifying. Ambassador Krelon's form flickered with agitation. "Captain Chen, surely your people understand that this show of force is excessive. Commander Zethkar has expressed regret for his actions." "Has he?" Captain Chen looked at the Veltar commander. "I have heard no apology." Zethkar's pride warred with his growing fear of the human fleet outside. The hegemony does not apologize to lesser species." "Lesser species?" Dr. Vasquez's voice was sharp. "Commander, there are 400 human warships outside this station. Each one could probably destroy your entire fleet. I think your definition of lesser needs updating." A new voice cut through the conversation. "Captain Chen, please respond." Everyone turned as a communication panel lit up with an incoming transmission. Captain Chen moved to answer it. "This is Captain Chen. Captain, this is Admiral Rodriguez aboard the UHSF Indomitable. We have arrived to collect our people. What is your status?" Through the observation window, the delegates could see a massive ship emerging from faster-than-light travel. It was easily twice the size of the largest hegemony dreadnought, with weapon systems that defied easy classification. The Indomitable took position at the head of the human fleet like a steel mountain floating in space. "Admiral, I am unharmed, and the situation is stable. The alien delegates have been educational to speak with. Good to hear your voice, Captain. I trust the party responsible for your injury is present." All eyes turned to Commander Zethkar, who seemed to shrink inside his crystal armor. Then I demand diplomatic immunity. This is neutral space under Galactic Council protection." Admiral Rodriguez's voice came through the speakers, cold and precise. "Commander Zethkar, you struck a representative of humanity in violation of galactic law. Diplomatic immunity does not cover acts of violence against other diplomats." The hegemony will not surrender one of its commanders to primitive Deathworlders, Zethkar declared. Though his voice shook slightly. Primitive? There was dark amusement in the Admiral's voice. Commander, you might want to check your sensors. Tell me what you see. The Corvin delegate was already studying his readings, his face growing pale. Admiral, our sensors show your fleet has weapons we cannot identify. Energy signatures that should not be possible. How did you develop such technology? We learned from the best teachers in the galaxy. War, suffering, and necessity. Earth has been trying to kill us for millions of years. We got very good at not dying. Captain Chen looked out at the human fleet with something like pride. When we reached the stars, we found a galaxy where might made right. So we made sure we would have might. Commander Zethkar was receiving urgent communications from his own fleet. The expressions of his officers told him everything he needed to know. They were outgunned and outmatched by an impossible margin. This cannot be real, he whispered. Your species was barely using metal tools a few thousand years ago. A few thousand years is a long time for a species that refuses to give up, Dr. Vasquez replied. We went from wooden clubs to spaceflight in less time than most species take to develop writing. When we decide we need something, we build it. Admiral Rodriguez's voice came through the speakers again. Commander Zethkar, you have two options. You can surrender yourself for trial under galactic law, or we can come and collect you. I strongly recommend the first option. And if I refuse? The silence stretched for several long seconds. When the Admiral spoke again, his voice was soft and deadly. Commander, you struck one of our people. In human culture, that is not something we forgive or forget. We have very long memories and very powerful ships. You can face justice now, or you can face something much worse later. Zethkar looked around the room at the other delegates. None of them would meet his eyes. They had all received reports from their governments about the human fleet. The numbers were staggering. Over 500 ships now, with more arriving every hour. Some were the size of small moons. How? He asked, his voice broken. How did you hide this from us? Captain Chen's smile was cold as winter on Earth. We didn't hide it, Commander. You just never bothered to look. You saw what you expected to see. A primitive species taking its first steps into space. You never imagined that we might have been planning for this day since we first looked up at the stars. Outside the observation window, the human fleet continued to grow. Ship after ship emerged from faster-than-light travel, each one a testament to humanity's refusal to be victims in a hostile galaxy. The age of human weakness was over. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you struck a species that had survived on a death world and learned to fight back. The standoff had continued for another day. The human fleet now numbered over 700 ships, with more arriving every few hours. The alien forces had also grown as reinforcements came from across the galaxy. The Hegemony Third Fleet had been joined by ships from the Zephyrian Empire and the Crystalline Collective. Together, they had nearly 300 warships surrounding Proxima 7 Station. Commander Zethkar stood in the command center of his flagship, the dreadnought Eternal Conquest. His crystal armor seemed dimmer now, as if his growing fear was affecting its inner light. Around him, his officers monitored the tactical situation with increasing nervousness. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, our combined fleet now outnumbers the humans nearly 3-1. Our alliance partners are ready to support us if conflict begins. Zethkar nodded, trying to project confidence he did not feel. Good. These Deathworlders may have more ships than we expected, but numbers are not everything. Our technology has been proven in 1,000 battles across the galaxy. But even as he spoke, he could see the doubt in his officer's eyes. The human ships defied easy classification. Their hulls were made of materials that absorbed sensor scans, making it impossible to determine their true capabilities. Their energy signatures suggested power systems that should not have been possible. On Proxima 7th Station, the diplomatic situation had become increasingly tense. Captain Chen remained calm and professional, but the other delegates grew more nervous with each passing hour. The weight of 700 human warships hanging in space was affecting everyone. Admiral Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system again. Commander Zethkar, this is your final warning. Surrender yourself for trial, or face the consequences of your actions. Zethkar activated his own transmitter, broadcasting to both the human fleet and the gathered alien forces. Admiral Rodriguez, the Veltar hegemony does not surrender to primitive species regardless of how many ships they possess. If you wish to take me, you are welcome to try. Very well, Commander. You have made your choice. In the station's observation deck, Captain Chen watched the human fleet begin to move. One ship broke formation. A sleek destroyer about half the size of a hegemony cruiser. Its name was painted on the hull in crisp white letters. Newton's Revenge. What is that ship doing? Ambassador Krelon asked, his form flickering with worry. Providing a demonstration, Captain Chen replied calmly. Admiral Rodriguez believes in giving people exactly what they ask for. The Newton's Revenge moved slowly toward the center of the alien formation, directly toward the massive hegemony dreadnought Eternal Conquest. The alien ships tracked its movement but held their fire, unsure of human intentions. Dr. Vasquez frowned as she watched. Sarah, that destroyer is heading straight for their biggest ship. That's suicide. The dreadnought has enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Does it? Captain Chen's smile was cold. Elena, remember what I told you about humanity learning from our teachers? Or taught us many lessons. One of them was that the best defense is making your enemies afraid to attack you. Commander Zethkar watched the approaching human ship with growing confusion and anger. What is that vessel doing? Is this some kind of surrender? Sir, his weapons officer reported, the human destroyer is not responding to our hails. It continues on course toward our position. Then destroy it, Zethkar ordered. If they want to sacrifice one ship to make some meaningless gesture, let them. The Eternal Conquest opened fire with everything it had. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids unleashed their fury. Fusion missiles streaked through space, each one carrying enough explosive power to level a city. Exotic particle beams designed to tear apart the atomic structure of enemy hulls lanced out toward the small human ship. The weapons struck the Newton's Revenge in a display of light and energy that was visible across the entire system. For a moment, the destroyer vanished in a ball of fire and radiation. Direct hit, the weapons officer reported. Target should be completely destroyed. But as the energy dissipated, the Newton's Revenge emerged completely unharmed. Its hull showed no damage, no scorch marks, not even discoloration from the incredible assault it had just endured. The ship continued on its course as if nothing had happened. Impossible, Zethkar whispered. Nothing can survive that kind of firepower. On the observation deck, the alien delegates stared in shock at what they had just witnessed. The Corvan delegate was frantically checking his sensors, unable to believe the readings. The human ship's shields did not even fluctuate, he reported in a stunned voice. It absorbed energy equivalent to a direct hit from a stellar fusion bomb without any apparent effect. Lieutenant Commander Park nodded as if this was perfectly normal. Adaptive defensive systems. The shields analyze incoming weapons and adjust their frequency to provide maximum protection. By the time the second shot arrives, they are already immune to that type of attack. That should be impossible, the Centauri representative protested. The energy requirements alone. We told you we use zero-point extractors, Dr. Vasquez reminded him. When you can tap directly into the quantum foam that underlies reality itself, energy requirements become much less of a problem. The Newton's Revenge had reached optimal firing position. It came to a stop relative to the hegemony dreadnought, about 10,000 kilometers away. For a moment, space was silent except for the background radiation of the stars. Then the human destroyer fired a single weapon. There was no visible beam, no missile trail, no energy discharge that alien sensors could detect. One moment the Eternal Conquest was there, 3 kilometers of crystalline armor and devastating weapons, the pride of the hegemony fleet. The next moment it simply ceased to exist. The dreadnought did not explode or break apart. It did not burn or melt or collapse. It was there and then it was not, leaving only empty space where 30,000 Veltar warriors had been a second before. The silence that followed was deafening. What? The Altarian delegate whispered. What weapon could do that? Captain Chen's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she was discussing routine maintenance. Kinetic impactor, a tungsten rod about the size of a telephone pole, accelerated to 30% of light speed. At that velocity, it hits with the force of a small star-going supernova. Commander Zethkar stared at the empty space where his flagship had been. His entire command crew was gone. 30,000 of his people had vanished in an instant. The impossibility of what he had just witnessed broke something inside his mind. You murdered them all, he stammered. No. Admiral Rodriguez's voice came through the communicators, cold as the void between stars. You murdered them, Commander. When you struck Captain Chen, you made a choice. When you refused to surrender for trial, you made another choice. When you ordered your ship to fire on one of ours, you made a third choice. Those deaths are on your hands, not ours. The human fleet had not moved except for the single destroyer. 700 ships hung in space like sleeping giants, each one now revealed to be capable of destruction beyond imagination. The alien forces that had seemed so powerful just minutes before now looked like children's toys in comparison. The demonstration is complete, Admiral Rodriguez announced to all vessels in the system. Any ship that wishes to leave may do so safely. Any ship that chooses to remain and continue this confrontation will share the fate of the eternal conquest. One by one, alien ships began to power down their weapons and move away from the human fleet. The Zephyrian Empire vessels were the first to leave, followed quickly by the crystalline collective forces. Even some of the hegemony ships began to withdraw, their commanders unwilling to face the same instant death that had claimed their flagship. In the observation deck, Commander Zethkar fell to his knees. The weight of his choices crushed down on him like gravity itself. He had killed his own people through pride and stupidity. Captain Chen looked down at him without pity. Now you understand, Commander. This is what happens when you strike a human. This is the price of violence against those who refuse to be victims. The galaxy would remember this day, the moment when humanity revealed its true strength and showed that the age of bullying Deathworlders was over forever. 1 week had passed since the demonstration. The galaxy had changed in ways that would take years to fully understand. Commander Zethkar sat in a detention cell aboard the human ship Indomitable. The cell was clean and comfortable, far better than what most species provided for prisoners. But comfort meant nothing to him now. Through the small window he could see the stars, and he knew that somewhere among them, his people were trying to explain to the rest of the hegemony how their greatest dreadnought had simply vanished. The cell door opened with a soft hiss. Captain Sarah Chen entered, carrying a tablet and wearing a fresh uniform. The small scar on her lip had become the most famous mark in galactic history. News broadcasts across 1,000 worlds had shown the moment of his strike and everything that followed. "Commander," she said, sitting across from him at the small table, "your trial begins tomorrow." Zethkar looked up at her with empty eyes. "Trial? What is the point? You have already decided my fate." "No, Commander. You decided your fate when you struck me. The trial will simply make it official under galactic law." Her voice was calm and professional, showing no satisfaction in his defeat. "You will be represented by legal counsel from your own species. The proceedings will be broadcast so that all may see that human justice is fair, even to those who wrong us." "Fair?" Zethkar's laugh was bitter. "You destroyed my flagship and killed 30,000 of my people. How is that fair?" Captain Chen leaned forward slightly. "Those people died because you chose pride over wisdom, Commander. When Admiral Rodriguez gave you the chance to surrender, you chose to fight instead. When my people offered you a peaceful solution, you chose violence. Every death that followed was the direct result of your decisions. But the weapon, that weapon should not exist. No species in the galaxy has the technology to accelerate matter to such speeds." "No other species needed it," Chen replied. "Most civilizations developed in relatively peaceful galaxies, or they were the dominant predators from the beginning. Humanity developed on a world that was constantly trying to kill us, surrounded by a universe that seemed equally hostile. We learned to build tools that could match any threat." Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. "I have been receiving reports from across the galaxy. Your people have revealed similar fleets in dozens of systems. How long have you been preparing for this?" "Since we first achieved spaceflight," Chen answered honestly. "We looked at the galaxy and saw how it worked. The strong dominated the weak, might made right, and primitive species were enslaved or destroyed. We decided we would not be primitive. So you lied to us. You pretended to be weak while building weapons that could destroy us all." Chen's expression softened slightly. "Commander, we hoped it would never come to this. We genuinely wanted peaceful relations with all species. But we also remembered the lessons of our own history. On Earth, peaceful peoples who could not defend themselves were conquered by those who could. We refused to let that happen to humanity." The door opened again and Admiral Rodriguez entered. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars that spoke of many battles. His presence filled the small cell like a storm front. "Commander Zethkar, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never lost a war. "I wanted to speak with you before your trial." Zethkar straightened in his chair, some of his old pride returning. "Admiral, have you come to gloat over your victory?" "No," Rodriguez replied, sitting down at the table. "I came to explain something to you, something that might help you understand what really happened here. I understand perfectly. Your species is more advanced than we believed. You have weapons we cannot match." Rodriguez shook his head. "Commander, you still don't get it. This was never about our weapons. It was about you striking one of our people. She is just one individual." "No." The Admiral's voice cut him off like a blade. "She is not just one individual. She is a representative of humanity. When you struck her, you struck all of us. When you showed disrespect for her, you showed disrespect for our entire species." Zethkar frowned, trying to understand. "But she is nothing special. Just a military officer sent to talk." Captain Chen spoke up. "Commander, that's where you're wrong. Every human is special to other humans. We learned that lesson the hard way. Through wars and suffering and loss, we learned that when we stand together, we can survive anything. When we abandon each other, we die." "Your species thinks differently," Admiral Rodriguez continued. "The hegemony values strength above all else. You respect power and despise weakness. But humans learned that our greatest strength comes from caring about each other." "That makes no sense," Zethkar protested. "Caring about individuals makes a species weak. It prevents leaders from making hard decisions, does it?" Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Commander, you struck one human officer. In response, we mobilized 700 warships and crossed half the galaxy to demand justice. We were willing to fight a war that could have destroyed both our species. How does that make us weak?" The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Zethkar stared at the two humans, beginning to understand something that terrified him more than their weapons ever could. "You would really have fought a war over one person? Over the principle that no one strikes our people without consequences," Chen confirmed. "Yes, Commander. We would have fought and died to the last human before we let that insult stand unanswered. But that's insane, is it?" Admiral Rodriguez leaned back in his chair. "Commander, let me ask you something. If I had struck one of your officers in front of the Galactic Council, what would you have done?" "I would have demanded satisfaction, of course." "But that is different. Hegemony honor requires—" "Exactly," Rodriguez interrupted. "You would have fought for your honor." "Well, Commander, you struck our honor when you struck Captain Chen. The difference is that human honor extends to every single one of our people, not just the strong ones." Zethkar felt something cold settle in his stomach. "You mean every human would receive the same response?" "Every human," Chen confirmed. "From the most powerful admiral to the humblest farmer. Strike one of us and you face all of us. That is why we will never be conquered," Admiral Rodriguez added. "Other species see individuals as expendable resources. Humans see individuals as irreplaceable family. You cannot defeat a species where every single member knows that all the others will fight and die to protect them." The full implications of what he was hearing crashed over Zethkar like a wave. Humanity was not just technologically superior. They were united in a way that no other species had ever achieved. Every human was backed by the full might of their civilization, not just in theory but as a genuine promise. "The galaxy is going to change now," Admiral Rodriguez said, standing up. "Other species are going to have to learn new rules. The rule that might makes right is still true. But now everyone knows that humanity has the might to enforce our own rules." "And what are your rules?" Zethkar asked quietly. Captain Chen stood as well, looking down at him with something that might have been pity. "Simple, Commander. Leave us alone and we will leave you alone. Respect our people and we will respect yours. But raise a hand against any human anywhere and you will face the consequences." As they prepared to leave, Admiral Rodriguez paused at the door. "Your trial tomorrow will be fair, Commander. You will have every legal protection under galactic law, but you will be found guilty because you are guilty. And then you will serve as a reminder to the galaxy of what happens when someone makes the mistake you made." After they left, Zethkar sat alone in his cell, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the news of humanity's true strength was spreading to every civilized world. The balance of power that had existed for thousands of years was gone forever. He had struck a human diplomat in a moment of pride and anger. That single act, lasting no more than 5 seconds, had changed the fate of the galaxy. The age of humanity had begun, and it had started with his hand striking a woman who refused to be intimidated. History would remember Commander Zethkar, but not as the proud warrior he had always imagined himself to be. He would be remembered as the fool who taught the galaxy never to strike a human. The stars outside his window seemed colder now, as if they too understood that everything had changed. In the distance, human ships moved through space with the confidence of a species that no longer needed to hide their strength. The galaxy had wanted to see what humans would do when struck. Now they knew.